Phil, I see is here. Phil, are you, that's the only person I see is from the team.
Okay.
I'm also here with doing the working time
Oh, no,
definition.
no, I know. I knew you were, I was just meant, when I was thinking of like whether it's Phil or whether it's, Kelly or whomever. Yeah.
And I think it's just those two items for tonight, right, Mr.
Yep.
Crawford? Because we'd
Okay.
remove the pre-K sliding scale. Okay.
Yeah.
We are live streaming.
Good afternoon, members of the public and board members. This is our Education Transformation and Finance Committee meeting. We have a couple of agenda items that we're going to cover today. Want to just again welcome everyone. We'll have an action item related to career ladders that we'll talk about. Again, what will come from this discussion is the department will present a proposal. We will hear the proposal. This will be an opportunity to ask questions about the proposal. And upon completion of the presentation and any questions or whatever, then the members of the committee that are present will then vote on whether or not to present this at our next board meeting, which is, I think it's the first Tuesday in December, our in-person board meeting. So with that, I want to now just turn this portion of the meeting over to Dr. Wright. So we're going to talk about the state guidance on telehealth, and then on.
I don't
No,
have
I'm
that.
sorry. I'm not. That's Thursday's meeting. We're just doing. I think we just have the one.
Yeah, it's just the career ladder working time and a
Yes.
definition and policy moving forward, and then a review of blueprint timelines and an overview of the implementation plan.
Sounds good.
I'm going to turn the first one over to Alex. This just is for background. The definition of how working time gets defined was changed. The authorization was changed this past legislative session to provide the State Board of Education the authority to define working time. And so we have been working not only internally, but also we have been working with our AIB counterparts at our monthly meeting to go over the review of this. And Alex is going to present it. Then we're going to open it up for questions. PZAM, the superintendents are aware of this. We've discussed this with them. We discussed this with M&S at their conference. So we've gotten a lot of feedback on this definition. Alex?
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm gonna get the slides back up in a second here. Are we able to see the slides, everybody?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. So we, as Dr. Wright shared, we're talking today about the Educator Career Ladder, which is established as part of the blueprint. And we're zooming into a very specific part of the career ladder today, focused on the collaborative time that is embedded in the statute, and a specific definition of what constitutes a teacher's working time. We're going to dive into that today. So I think generally speaking, probably all are familiar with the idea that the career ladder is set up so that teachers are able to earn different levels of responsibility. And it's presumed that there are commensurate salary increases as teachers move higher on the career ladder. And along with that comes additional job embedded professional development. Along with the opportunity to work with students who need extra help. And so the blueprint really focuses on this, and I'll show you in a second how it's designed such that the percentage of a teacher's time spent teaching in the classroom as a teacher moves up the career ladder actually decreases. And so there's a definition that we'll need to focus on today related to how the teacher's time is defined. So on the left here, you should see, oh, I'm ahead of myself. So the on the career ladder, we see that that there are a few different rungs to this, and so a teacher starts. Level one is a state certified teacher, and that's a teacher who holds their educator certificate. An average of 60% of a teacher's working time is spent teaching in the classroom. And 40% of their time for a level one teacher is on non-teaching activities, which we'll talk about in a minute. As a teacher moves up to level two, this is a teacher who's pursuing a master's degree, has worked towards 30 credits of an approved course of study, or is pursuing their national board certification. And this teacher would also be at that 60% of working time spent teaching in the classroom. As a teacher gets to level three, this is a teacher who has attained national board certification or a master's degree for a teacher where there's no assessment in their area comparable to national board certification. And then it's beyond level three, and when a teacher gets to level four, that their percentage of teaching time in the classroom reduces by design. So an A1 lead teacher must hold their national board certification or master's degree. They're teaching 50% of their working time in the classroom. An A2 distinguished teacher is on average 40% of their working time in the classroom. And then finally, the teacher who takes on this professor distinguished teacher identifies as having exceptional accomplishments, really focused primarily at this point on colleague development. They are teaching an average of 20% of their time in the classroom. And so as the teacher moves up, the amount of time they spend teaching decreases, and presumably their pay would increase. So the working time statutory requirements are defined in Education Article 6-1003. And the law specifies that a teacher on level 1, 2, or 3 of the career ladder shall teach in the classroom on average 60% of the teacher's working time and spend the remaining time on these other activities that you see listed here. It's also important to note that the law says that this is a phased-in approach. So no, the law does not presume that beginning on July 1st of next year that we would be at this 60-40 split, but rather this would become effective in phases over an 8-year period that begins starting on July 1st, 2025. And so what we're here to talk specifically about was really important to our local superintendents to have clarity on is how we are defining a teacher's working time. So you can see here below, there was a previous definition that had been provided through guidance from AIB and MSDE that had operationalized this as being a percent of a teacher's time during the student day in hours in a student year. And this is a very ambitious way to define teacher working time. We heard a lot of feedback from our local superintendents who were concerned with this definition for a variety of reasons, and their ability to ensure that they could achieve the 60-40 split, even as it's phased in over 8 years. And so what we have done is we've consulted with the AIB and worked to define this in a slightly different way that still gets to the spirit of the blueprint. So I will read this because this is the important piece here. For the purposes of calculating a teacher's time teaching from their total working time as prescribed by law, working time shall be defined as the teacher's total contractual working time in hours in a contractual year. So the key difference to note here is that this is inclusive of time that a teacher that's part of the teacher's contract that's outside of the student school day and outside of the student school year. And the thinking here is that there is a lot of collaborative time that is provided for which teachers are compensated that falls after the student day, sometimes before the student day, and outside of the student year. There are a number of professional development days throughout the year, before the school year starts, sometimes after the student year ends. And so we are including that in the denominator of this fraction, for lack of a better way to describe it, because it is part of a teacher's collaborative time that would be provided. So that would be included with this definition as part of the 40% that is designated as non-teaching time. So under this proposed definition, and we're really, just using a lot of the language directly from the law here, 60% of the teacher's working time is spent teaching in the classroom, and then 40% of the teacher's working time includes independent time. I want to draw this distinction here just for clarity. Independent planning time could include a teacher working on their own to prepare their lessons, grading students' assignments. That 40% also includes a teacher's collaborative activities, which would include but are not limited to the following things. So improving instruction, identifying, working with, or tutoring students who need additional help, working with the most challenging students living in concentrated poverty, and leading or participating in professional. And this list here comes directly from the statute. We're not proposing any significant changes to the law here. So the recommended state board action, what Dr. Wright and our team are proposing and recommending to the state board, is that MSDE and the state board approve this new definition. And after approval is granted, should it be granted, MSD would request the state board to further codify these definitions in regulation. So you'll note that we are considering a two-pronged approach to really codifying this definition. We're coming first to do a policy before you today. And the reason for that is because our local superintendents and local school systems need to know sooner than later. We've heard from them loud and clear that they need to know from us what our approach will be to defining the teacher working time, like soon, yesterday, because they are in the process of negotiating their contracts for the upcoming school year and school years. And so we want to immediately propose this board action, because that will give some clarity to our local superintendents. And then down the line, consider that we would also build this into a regulation, which will just take more time, but wanted to start with the policy for today. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions. And I'm joined today by Phil Lasser, who you know well, who is deeply embedded in the work around Career Ladder and teacher work time. So he's here to help with any specific questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Alex. We appreciate that, and appreciate all the work that the department has done in the coordination with the local superintendents. If you want to take that down, and now let's see if we have questions from board members on what's being proposed. I'll just start off. So this is the definition. How they're going to phase this in is subject to local negotiations with their unions, right? Correct?
Correct. And just to more specifically into that question, Mr. Cockbridge, so the local school systems will be required by July 1st of 2025 to submit to the AIB their career ladder submission. And as part of that, they will have to define how they intend to phase in the collaborative time over the course of the next 8 years. So we've shared some early drafts of templates that they'll need to fill out, that the AIB will then examine to ensure that they are making a good faith effort to build towards this 60-40 definition and phase in the implementation of the career ladder.
Right. Just again, do we have questions from board members? While we're, Ms. Chang?
Yes, I do have one clarification and maybe some questions. So one is about the difference of pay means that does the current teachers based on their merit do their pay increase by the merit? Or I know the year prior the teacher get a pay raise, right? But is it like not a routine or not like a building budget sense?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's also difficult for us to answer just because the salary piece of the career ladder is obviously not in statute and is negotiated differently by each LEA in their collective bargaining process. So the salary implications of the career ladder are just a little bit harder for us to predict or speak to because it could look a little different in each LEA. What's embedded in law isn't the salary scale per se, but the concept of the career ladder and how it and the tenets of it being. The
Okay,
idea,
that would
though, to answer your question, is that yes, that there would be, as a teacher moves up the career ladder, that they would see commensurate salary.
okay. And the other one is that about the different letter from level 1 through level 4. And does it tie to the years of teaching? Like how many years of experience that the teacher can be entering certain career ladders, or strictly based on their credential?
Totally, it's a good question. Totally based on their credential and specifically their attainment of either national board certification or a master's degree that is for those who there's certain content areas where national board certification doesn't exist as an option, and so for those areas, the teacher can get a master's degree in it, that's sort of the equivalent. But yes, it's not based upon years of experience. It's explicitly based upon the national board certification status of the master's.
Okay. And the next one I have is about the slide marked as number 6. Yeah, I say for the purpose of the teacher's total contractual working time. So if it's a full time, what is the contractual working time per year, calendar per contractual year?
Yeah, are you asking like what is the contract? How is the contractual year defined?
As a full time, as one FTE.
Yeah, so this
is it the same across the districts or they are different?
It is different.
It is
Yeah, it's different. This is another one that's different. So each LEA would negotiate their contractual day and contractual year. Sorry, Dr. Wright, I didn't mean it.
No, that was what I was going to say. Thanks.
Okay, because I wonder if it's rounded to 2 decimal places. If we count it by hours, we say 0.01 hour means it's 0.6 minutes, something like that. I would just say, wow, there's like a OR time billing. I'm sorry, I'm a medical field. Like, in OR, you're billed by per minute. I was thinking, wow, the teachers are, down to the detail of 0.6 minute.
Yeah.
I know that's the statute, but I will just try to reason myself out. They have to be rounded to 2 decimal places. I just thought. But for the slide number 6, I tried to kind of figure out those 3 bullet points that, the contract designates non-working. Non-working means non-teaching.
So,
or the non-working is part of the contractual time.
Yeah, so and this is also different by district. And I know that that's sort of a unsatisfying answer, but some districts, their contract, the way that they define a teacher's contractual working time actually explicitly does not include a 30 or 45-minute lunch period. That's a duty-free lunch period. That's part of their negotiated agreement. So if the contract designates that non-working time, such as a duty-free lunchtime, then that would not be included in the total denominator of this fraction. Like, it would not be included as part of the overall total working time.
Okay. So what the non-working time means, those would be excluded, or like spending some time individually with a certain students, those will be excluded too, right?
Yeah, so think of the non-working. I think that probably the easiest way to like define it is just think of the non teaching time as any time that a teacher is not leading instruction for a group of
Mm-hmm.
students at
Mm-hmm.
in the classroom. So if a teacher, for example, is pulling a small group, a couple of students for tutoring, that would
Mm-hmm.
be considered non-teaching time under this definition.
Mm-hmm.
And we think of teaching as when they're leading instruction for their caseload of students.
Okay. Okay. So it will be excluded if they are having like a field trip, even it's teaching percent somewhat related, it'll be non-working time.
A field trip is a tough one. I feel like that's hopefully more of not necessarily part of the detailed calculation here, but it's a good question. I mean, I think anytime that a teacher is not leading instruction. So
Mhm.
sometimes on a field trip, I would expect my teachers to lead instruction during the field trip. But I know a lot of field trips are not operating that way. So yes, I think that would be a good example of non-teaching.
Okay, thank you. That would be all my questions. Appreciate that.
Let me make sure I understand when we say it's the teacher's contractual work year. So my impression is that teachers' contractual work year is actually longer than the 180 days. So it's
That's
more
correct.
than 80 days.
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct.
So one of the things that I remember when we talked about this a while back, the career ladder concern was that we would be pulling teachers out of classrooms, and the net effect would be, in order to deliver the same amount of instruction and the like, that LEAs may have to hire or bring on board more teachers at a
That is
higher.
that's correct. That has been the superintendent's concern, particularly at the elementary level, that they're going to need a lot more bodies in order to pull this off if it was defined the way it used to be defined. They're very comfortable with the definition that we are giving you today.
So
Okay.
by redefining it as the teacher work year, conceivably then some of that time that teachers are on site and students are not could be used to count towards meeting this requirement.
That's
But
correct.
the net effect is that potentially reduces the amount of time that's needed to be made up during the course of a day. In other words, with more teachers or whatever.
Yeah, the professional development day, in August before
Right.
students start, where teachers are able to collaborate and be engaged in learning together and training together, that would be included in the 40% with this definition. And just to build on what Dr. Wright shared, this definition helps us with the potential need to hire a bunch of additional teachers amidst the teaching shortage. But we do anticipate that even with this definition, that districts and schools would need to hire additional teachers. Our hope is that over an 8-year phase in, there's time to get there, but I don't want to suggest that this definition solves all of the problems or challenges related to teacher hiring. This would likely require us to our school systems to hire additional teachers, but not nearly as many as
Magnitude.
they would have to if we had defined it the other way.
Last question, then I'm going to Dr. Mike. So if the local LEAs find at some point they may have to hire additional teachers, is there additional funding in the blueprint or in other sources that would be helpful to them to cover that cost?
No,
There
sir.
is.
Well,
So
not all of
there,
them. Let's
yeah.
be careful what we're saying it covers and what it doesn't cover, because it depends on the number you have to hire,
Okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
Right. And there's not currently funding for
No,
that, but
right.
there is a per pupil collaborative time in current law that is a per student increase. it's like $160-ish per student in year one in FY 26, and then it builds each year. In current law, there is that additional per pupil funding that's allocated for the collaborative time.
Okay, so would help offset some of the costs
Right,
potentially.
particularly when you're talking about a starting salary of $60,000 per teacher.
Dr. Michael.
Thank you. Dr. Wright or Mr. Reese, do we know, what does the blueprint tell us, or do we have any read on what the blueprint projects in terms of the number of teachers that we would need to hire to meet this? Like, what, do we have a sense of numbers or percents?
The current definition or the former definition?
The former definition.
I think it was up near 2,000.
It was certainly a large number. I think that because
You're talking, yeah, let me just make sure I'm answering the right question. So Josh, you're saying based on the definition, the way it was originally proposed, not this definition?
Correct. Do we have any sense of like what, any modeling on how many more teachers would be needed on the former definition?
I thought the superintendents had put forward, oh, you're saying 15,000, then it's far, okay. I thought at one time I had seen the number of 2,000. Alex is saying it's 15,000.
And these are just estimates, so we don't want anyone to leave thinking that that's a specific number, but that's as we worked with the AIB and with our local superintendents, they've estimated that under the previous definition that we would be looking to hire around 15,000 additional teachers and a teacher.
Okay. I think the second, look, I'm a former teacher, as you all know. I think the bigger question for me, right, like to truly improve outcomes for children, we need to ensure two things. One, that our best teachers and most effective teachers are teaching students. And we need to ensure that teachers have the appropriate time to collaborate with one another in really productive settings. And those two things are related, right? Like you become a really effective teacher, not by figuring it out on your own, but by, collaborating, seeing other teachers, all sorts. What, in the ecosystem, I'm seeing a lot of like moving around at kind of like negotiating time, this, that. I'll tell you from my experience, like the amount of time in my contract or what was in my schedule didn't determine the effectiveness of my collaborative time. That for me was dictated by the quality of the instructional leader that was like leading that time and how my principal scheduled and planned ahead of time to coordinate professional learning. What are we doing as a department, or what is the AIB doing at this point to help our districts really lean in and ensure that the time we're setting aside for collaborative time is actually going to be effective time where our professionals are getting to work with one another and learning and growing?
I think that we were actually just talking about this morning. One lever that we can pull there is there's many are familiar with the blueprint leadership training that's being provided to all of our school principals, or a number of our school principals across the state. School principals are, in many cases, if not all cases, the instructional leader in their building. And so their ability to guide our collaborative time within their buildings, to be productive collaborative time, is critical. I couldn't agree more, Dr. Michael, and I think that there's the way that we invest in the leadership of our schools to make sure that our principals and other instructional leaders know how to use this time well, is as important as having the time.
Okay, I would just push. Look, I think this is a common sense thing to do. We don't have the teachers to backfill to make this kind of change at this point. The worst thing we could be doing, I'm thinking about my daughter's school, is pulling her teachers out 40% of the school time, backfilling with people who are not certified teachers. Like, we're not ready for that, and that doesn't make sense. My push for us is, what guidance are we pushing out now, right? Like, as we cannot just push this down. We've got to really be supporting, identifying the best models around collaborative time. It's not always going to be negotiating a contract. Sometimes it's going to be creative scheduling within schools. And I just would push us. This is a really critical lever, how we think strategically about helping teachers grow. And I think as an ecosystem, we've got to be thinking differently here so that we're supporting school leaders differently, so school leaders supporting teachers differently. And I'm just would really encourage us. I think it's time for us to lean in.
No, I agree with that. I agree with that 100%. I think that that only makes sense for us. I mean, particularly if we're passing, the board passes this policy, would be for us to follow that with guidance around what does quality collaborative time look like. I agree.
I had one more question,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Crawford.
Please.
Elliot reminded me earlier on, and I'm hoping, Elliot, you can frame this for us a little bit more. As I understand it, this is a special, we are empowered in this part of the law, which Mr. Reese cited earlier, to really define what collaborative time looks like. That authority is vested in the board, but it's also nested within a set of provisions in which we are to be building regs. And I believe we need to do that with AIB and with PSTEP. Can you just frame for our body what our responsibilities are as we're thinking about this broader section of the law around the career ladder?
So was that for me or for Alex?
Either one, probably Elliot. But Alex, if you've got it and you want to hit it, either way is fine. Just help us frame this decision we're going to have to see regs around career ladder. Help us understand how we have to, play within this governance ecosystem to get these rules across the line more comprehensively.
Absolutely, yeah. So House Bill 1426 in this past legislative session delegated the responsibility to define and approve further clarification and specification of these, like this working time definition and how this is implemented to the state board. And so per that statutory change in 2024, this is a state board decision. In terms of the question around regulation, we as a department and as a state board should consider in the future the benefits of codifying this as a regulation as well. And so our team intends to make recommendations related to that. We just know that will take a little bit more time than our local school systems have to negotiate and prepare for the upcoming school year.
And I think the other piece, and Ellie, you might hit this too, there's a whole lot that we need, there's a whole lot of ground we need to cover, much more than this one specific rule.
Correct. I agree with what Alex just said. And the blueprint sections, primarily Title VI sections 1001 through 1011, really sets out the framework for the blueprint for the career ladder. But it is up to the board through regulation and policy and FAQs and additional guidance to flesh out the details. So a lot of it does self-implement, but there are other parts of the career ladder which will need additional thought and regulation to give the guidance, the legal guidance and enforceability that only a regulation can do. But yes, it is more than just this regulation. If you had, with this definition, if you had gone ahead and just made whether you haven't done anything yet, but if the board, it was going to have a single standalone definition, it would really be out of context. And so this is, depending on how the board acts, it would be a stopgap to give guidance to the locals until you're able to do a broader, comprehensive regulation related to the career ladder.
Thank you.
Clash, do you have anything that you would want to add, or comments or questions, anything? Actually, give you an opportunity as well. I want to go back to one of the points that Dr. Michael made, and I think it's incredibly important, and that is, as we look across the board at what we do, we need to, the department's doing a great job, so don't take this as a negative. We need to make sure that we have a real clear and a sharper focus on outcomes. Whatever we're doing should be tied back to how does this improve children's ability to read or perform math or graduate high school. We shouldn't have many, maybe outside of some of the athletic things that we do, we shouldn't have many things that we do that don't have a positive impact on student outcomes. And I think it's important that we continue to push that. One of the things I would like to again see is the adoption of a standard dashboard that has information about how we're doing at the state level, that's mirrored at the LEA level, where parents, guardians, taxpayers, whenever they come to one of our websites, one of the first things that they get a chance to see is how are we doing. I think that, again, generally what gets measured is what people do. So I think keeping our focus around outcomes for children and how do we make sure that at the end of the day that everything that we do sort of reinforces and strengthens that position for children. I think positions as well as we go forward. Great. So I think we have, there are 4 of us here on that are members of this committee, Dr. Michael, Ms. Chang, Mr. Clash, myself. What I'd like to do at this point is to call for a vote, and the vote would be a recommendation to bring forward this educator career ladder working definition to the full board for approval. So if we can get a motion from one of our board members on that.
I'll make a motion.
Ms. Chang, and then seconded by
Second.
by Dr. Michael. Okay.
I'm
All
waiting
right.
on Mr. Clash over there.
Yeah,
There he is. There's his second. All right.
all in favor, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
The motion passes, and that is to bring forward the education career ladder working definition to the full board in December for consideration and action. The second item that we have here is a blueprint update. One of the things with this committee is, again, our committee is going to be really looking at the blueprint implementation. So we'll from time to time have these information items to just refresh everyone's memory about the blueprint. Where are we? What are the responsibilities to be able to stay on top of those matters for the board? So I think we're going to get now an overview of the blueprint comprehensive implementation plan.
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Phil, you are on. Phil has led so much of our blueprint implementation development, the plans, the review of the plans. I mean, he's done a yeoman's job with this work. So Phil, I'm going to turn this over to you to provide the update.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Wright and thank you all for inviting me here today. So I was asked here, as Mr. Crawford said, to provide a bit of an overview of the blueprint with our different implementation plans and some of the timelines of the different items there to just make sure everyone has all of the resources at their fingertips, everyone here and everyone listening at home as well, and how everything works together to support the goals of the blueprint, and so that we're providing the best education possible for all of our students. So I want to start at the beginning at high level of what are the goals of the blueprint for the Maryland's future? What are we trying to achieve by all of the different programs and initiatives that we'll talk through in a minute? That what we see here on this slide are some of the overarching goals and promises for the blueprint itself. So the blueprint really aims to ensure an excellent and equitable education for every student. It has the promise and opportunity for every Maryland child. It does that by enriching student experiences, eliminating barriers, and building a world-class model so that students have build success in college, career, and life. And so we do this, we achieve these goals by working through the blueprint's 5 pillars. And so you'll see a lot anytime that someone's talking about the blueprint, that they really talk about these 5 different pillars. Sometimes you'll hear people just refer to Pillar 3 has these programs in it, Pillar 4 has those programs in it. So what the 5 pillars are of the blueprint, how this is structured, are that Pillar 1 is early childhood education, Pillar 2 is high quality and diverse teachers and leaders, Pillar 3 is college and career readiness, Pillar 4 is more resources for student success, and Pillar 5 is governance and accountability. And so all of the different blueprint programs all fall into one of these pillars. And so we'll see on the screen some examples of what those are, but just this is really one of the structural elements of how the blueprint brings everything together. And so this is important to know. And so once we have those 5 pillars, the one last overarching structure here is that the AIB put together this theory of action. And the real big takeaway here from this theory of action is that all 5 of these pillars work together. And they work together to implement the goals, the objectives of each specific pillar. And then they work together. So example, Pillar 1, the goal of Pillar 1 is that students enter kindergarten ready to learn. The goal of Pillar 4 is that students have the resources they need to be successful. And all of those work together to support the overall goal of Pillar 3, the second one on the right there, that students have the opportunities to participate in robust post-CCR pathways. And all of this, again, supports the overall blueprint outcomes that all Maryland students leave high school globally competitive and prepared for success in post-secondary education, work, and life. And so again, all of these pillars work together to achieve those goals. And within this, what we're about to talk through is how those specific programs that we talk about, how the career ladder that we just mentioned, how that builds up to those overarching goals. So before we do that, I want to share some of the development timeline of the blueprint itself, as well as the implementation plans. So in 2021, the blueprint law was enacted. That was during the legislative session in 2021. And so the set of statute went into place, enacted in 2021. December 1st, 2022 is when the AIB, Accountability Implementation Board, adopted its first initial blueprint comprehensive implementation plan. And I'll talk about that in a second. And then in 2023, each LEA, local education agency, each school district, and MSDE submitted their first blueprint implementation plans. And then again, I'll go through the detail in a minute. And that was in 2023. In 2023, August 1st as well, the AIB adopted some revisions to the blueprint comprehensive plan. And then in 2024, LEAs and MSD again submitted a second blueprint implementation plan, digging further into different topics and providing updates as well. So this is the overall timeline. I'll go into details in a second. Blueprint started in 2021, first implementation plan in 2022, and then MSDE and LEA plans in 2023 and 2024. So as I just mentioned, the AIB Blueprint Comprehensive Plan. This is the one document that if you are really looking to understand what are what tasks need to be done to complete the blueprint, what are the requirements of who needs to do what by when. The AIB Comprehensive Implementation Plan is that document that lists out specifically what are those requirements, what are those tasks, as well as providing additional information, additional guidance and recommendations for how to implement those different programs. And as we go through this, or as you look through the document, it's organized into a series of different levels to organize all the different tasks and requirements. And so those are the graphic down at the bottom there. Again, everything is organized by those 5 pillars that we just talked about. And then within that too are a series of objectives. And so within each pillar, there are a series of 3 to 5 objectives. And those really are the different program areas of the blueprint. And then further detailed tasks and subtasks, you will see listed out there that this is a requirement within this task, this is a requirement within that subtask. And so that's just generally how to read the Blueprint Comprehensive Plan once you get into it. And just go through a quick overview here of what this is the list of the pillars and objectives that are laid out within that within AIB's Blueprint Comprehensive Plan. And so don't need to go through all of them, but you see that within Pillar 1, Early Childhood Education, there are 3 objectives and 3 big program areas. The first one is expanding publicly funded full-day pre-K. Objective 2 is assessing student readiness for kindergarten, and Objective 3 is expanding family supports. And so those are the 3 big program areas within Pillar 1. And you'll see the same thing for Pillars 2 and 3, the different areas of the different tasks fall into. Increasing rigor of teacher prep programs, improving educator compensation. Pillar 3, implementing CCR pathways, providing high quality career counseling, CTE programs. And the same thing for Pillar 4 and 5. Here are, again, the big program areas, the objectives of the different tasks. So Objective 4.2 is improving the education for English learners. Objective 4.3 is improving the education for students with disabilities. Pillar 5, the governance and accountability, has supporting blueprint implementation planning, establishing and deploying our expert review teams, monitoring blueprint outcomes, and a couple others as well. So with that in mind and knowing how the AIB Blueprint Comprehensive Plan is structured, the next big document that we want to go over is the MSDE Blueprint Implementation Plans. And so this is the next set down that really talks through what is the implementation of the blueprint look like for MSDE across all of these different tests. And so what the blueprint legislation requires is that each state and local government unit that has some responsibilities develop and submit a implementation plan to the AIB. So that's MSDE has to submit a plan, each school district has to submit a plan, MHEC or Higher Education Commission submits a plan, and so this is what they are. So MSDE submitted its first plan on March 15th, 2023, and then submitted its second plan on August 15th, 2024. And so won't necessarily be submitting these annually. These were a set of, really the first 2 plans to lay out how MSDE has been implementing the blueprint so far, what the plans are going forward. And so we're working with AIB now to potentially see what the next submission was, not necessarily next year, but it could be. And so what you'll see within this as well is that as MSDE is responsible for tasks within each one of the pillars and objectives from the comprehensive plan, that a lot of how everything is structured, especially in our 2023 plan, is also organized by those pillars and objectives. And so you'll see that throughout that is how we organize our activities. And so I wanted to go into now a bit of an exercise that really tries to break down what the difference is between all of the different documents here that we're talking about, because I know this is a lot very quickly, jumping from one document to the next. And so going through this exercise that I want to walk through looking at our expansion of our Judy centers as an example, how the blueprint legislation, how that law and statute connects to the AIB comprehensive plan, and how that connects to the MSE blueprint implementation plan as well. And so we'll see that across all three documents, we talk about the same program, the same initiative, but in different ways. So the first thing to look at is this is a segment, a quick look at excerpt of legislation of state law. It's in the Maryland Code, Antecedent Code of Maryland, Education Articles, Section 5-230. And what the statute does is list out these requirements that for each of fiscal years 2021 through 2025, the state shall provide funding for 9 additional Judy centers per year. For fiscal years 26 through 2030, the state shall provide funding for 18 additional Judy centers per year. And so it's very quick and to the point of this is what needs to happen in this year, that we need this many more Judy centers. To make that a little bit more tangible, what that looks like day to day, we then move on to the AIB Blueprint Comprehensive Plan. And so again, this is using that organization structure that I talked through before within Pillar 1, Early Childhood Education. We then are in Objective 3. So Objective 1.3 is expanding family supports. And then Task 2 is to create 135 new Judy centers by fiscal year 30. And then we dig into subtask further, into the subtask 1.3.2a, and that really goes into the details here of what are MSDE's requirements. So again, this kind of restates the law in a bit plainer language that reads here: the state shall create 9 additional Judy centers per year between fiscal year 21 to 25, and 18 additional centers per year between fiscal 26 and 30. And then also lists additional requirements and guidance on the right side there of how MSD really should be thinking about this and working together. So this is how the AIB comprehensive plan takes that requirement from statute, from law, and puts it into more plain language for us to use and to plan our implementation activities going forward. So with that in mind, then going forward to the MSDE Blueprint Implementation Plan, what we have here is, this is screenshots of our response to the Judy Center program area. How the 2024 Blueprint, MSDE Blueprint Plan is organized is that AIB gave us a series of questions to answer and to provide a response to. And so question 6 in this answer was to ask MSDE to provide an update on MSDE's efforts to support the expansion, administration, and effective implementation of Patty and Judy centers. The response should describe how MSDE will conduct an evaluation of the effectiveness of Patty and Judy centers, including how the effectiveness will be defined and which data will be collected. So what this does is really moves on from those very quick requirements that, in this year 9 we need 9 additional centers each year. And we have a much more narrative and in-depth response to look at what is the implementation looking like on the ground. So we dig into a lot of data on demographics, our data collection process, our existing surveys to understand feedback on how well the Judy centers are working so far, as well as digging into some of the future planning for future effectiveness studies and future implementation to continue the expansion of the Judy Center. So this really goes through, again, the very quick line from statute to the bit more plain language from the Blueprint Comprehensive Plan to the MSTE Blueprint Plan, which really provides that narrative understanding of this is how this program is working and how what MSTE's plans are going forward as well for how we will continue to support the implementation of this program. And so obviously this is a quick example of all of this. There's much more detail in all of the plans, but I will show how to get to those in a little bit. And so with that in mind, want to move on a little bit now that we understand how the different plans work together. Want to share a quick timeline of some of the different Blueprint programs and when they are to be implemented. And so what I have here is this is definitely not comprehensive of all Blueprint programs, but a very quick idea shows you how some of these play together. And so within the implementation timelines, you'll see that in fiscal years 23 and 24, we had some of the initial planning reports due from MSTE. LEAs had to demonstrate a future salary increase of 10% over 5 years. Some of the career ladder incentives were put into place. The new CCR standard was adopted. The work group on English learners was conducted. And all of that has basically completed so far. That's some of the work that we've already done. Looking in the second column, fiscal years 24 and 25, these are things happening now. So have happened recently or are happening now. The new career counseling program for middle and high school students went into place. The special education work group is being conducted right now. Community schools are continuing to expand. And so all of these programs are happening right now in preparation for some of the other activities listed here going forward in the future columns. So one of the next things here in the fiscal years 26 and 27, as we talked about, the teacher career ladders will be fully implemented starting in fiscal 26, where this is, again, so some of it has already been there. Level 3 is already in place, live right now, but levels 4 and where the collaborative time comes in, that is going to be implemented soon. One of the next things is the $60,000 minimum teacher salary. That comes into place very soon as well. And the concentration of poverty per pupil grant funding is fully phased in as well in fiscal 27. Then looking further down the road, some of the goals that we have to look for are in fiscal 29. The goal is that 50% of our pre-K slots are provided by private providers. So looking at that 50% split between LEAs and private providers. And overall in fiscal 29, 30 new PADI centers have been created. In fiscal 30 and 31, 135 new Judy centers are created. Also have the goal of 45% of graduates complete an apprenticeship or industry recognized credential. And then finally, by fiscal year 33 is when everything really comes fully implemented. All of our funding formulas are fully phased in, fully funded. The teacher collaborative time, professional learning is fully implemented as well. That's when that 8-year phase-in completes. And so this is very much a very quick look at how everything comes together, but wanted to provide this. And then as I wrap up, again, want to give a quick review and have links here for anyone for future reading of the three main documents here to look at to really understand how implementation planning is coming together. So we have the Blueprint Comprehensive Implementation Plan from AIB. In the middle is MSTE's Blueprint Implementation Plan. And on the right are all of our LEA, all of our school district Blueprint implementation plans as well. And all of those can be accessed at those links. And with that, I will open it up for any questions or discussion.
Very good. Very good overview. Just a couple of initial thoughts. Be very much interested in getting updates on, I think it was slide 14. So as we're looking at the different initiatives that are coming online by school year, getting an update on where are we? So as we look at whether it's Judy Centers or career counseling or whatever, I think this committee would appreciate an update on how are we doing? Where are we on these initiatives? So that we have a sense of that. The other thing too, and don't misinterpret what I'm going to say, these are nice activities. I'm interested in trying to figure out whether children are learning to read, whether they are performing math, whether they're graduating high school. So I think as we look at these things, understand these are activities, but wherever we can tie them back to outcomes. I love the Judy Centers. I love going out looking at them, and the Patty Centers. I think they do a great job of outreach to the community and helping the parents and helping parents with everything from finding jobs and the like. Very, very needed things. The question I would have is, as we're doing that, are we really tracking educational outcomes? Are we looking to see whether it's having a positive effect on reductions in absenteeism? Do we know whether the academic performance of the children who are in these centers, is it making a difference there? And I think continuing as a board, continuing to ask those questions. And I know that with some of the measures and some of the things we're doing, you're not going to be able to draw as clear a nexus. But I think to the extent to which we can, we should always be asking, so what? So what? We're talking taxpayer dollars. Taxpayer dollars going to get more tight, scarce into the future. So I think it's incumbent upon us to be seen as a group that also we're looking at children, but we also are looking at it from a taxpayer perspective as well. What are we getting? Nicely done. Let me now open it up to questions or comments from board members. So the real key on these plans, as I've learned over the years, it's not the plans. It's the execution of the plans. That's what makes the difference. And being able to look and make sure that the department has, that the AIB has the resources and everything to support the local LEAs to ensure that these plans are being executed with fidelity. Dr. Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Crawford. For staff, we've got a lot of, so the blueprint plan, it was adopted in August of last year. We are a year and some months into that. Where can the public go to, or where can we go to begin to understand progress on the subtasks and the different components of the blueprint that are outlined here?
So I think the 2024 MSD Blueprint Implementation Plan does dig into that and does describe what our progress is on a number of different issues there. And so that goes through, what the progress was since the previous year or even before as well. So I would really look at those MSD Blueprint Implementation Plans. The 2023 plan also describes the activities that have been completed up to that point. If something was completed in 2023, it's not necessarily included in the 2024 plan. So I would look at the MSD Blueprint Implementation Plans to really understand what we have done already to meet all of these different goals.
Okay, so let me reflect back. So all of the subtasks, so we've got like output, you got tasks in the implementation plan. There are also outputs. So we start with the tasks. Or do all of that fall in the MSD plan, or are there parts of the implementation plan that the AIB holds on to? Help us understand, like, should we be able to find all of that information and updates in the MSDE plan? Talk to me about the difference there.
Got it. Yes, so there are, MSD does have a lot of responsibilities for implementing the different tasks. But no, there are a number of tasks that are the responsibility of the LEAs. There's tasks that are the responsibility of MHEC, of the Department of Labor. So to look at all of those, we can look at some of the reporting that the AIB has put together, look at some of the different annual reports that the districts and the other state agencies have put together. But yes, to get a comprehensive look, we will need to look beyond just the MST documents.
Okay. Thank you. My next question, just looking at the pillar level measures, we've got a lot of detailed requirements for monitoring and for outputs. Where can the public go, or when can we expect to be able to begin looking at that data in a rolled up way?
Alex, I don't know if you want to jump in here as well, but I think that is something that we are actively working to really pull it together in comprehensive way for the public to look at. Alex.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a really good question, Dr. Michael. I think that the plan itself outlines some of the progress that's been made that MSD has done since between the 2023 plan and the 2024 plan. I think we could do a better job of pulling out in a more easy to read, more accessible way on our website or through other tools. This tracker that Mr. Crawford is talking about, I think kind of hits on that. Is how do we see how we're doing in relation to the many tasks and subtasks that are in the blueprint implementation plan. And then furthermore, and I think this is what Mr. Crawford was getting at, how do we then zoom in? Because there are a lot of inputs that are part of the blueprint. And they're all important, and and we have aligned metrics that we have jointly adopted with the AIB that are really our North Star, and that we increasingly want to focus on. And to Mr. Crawford's point, draw connections between the work and the tasks that we are required to do from a compliance perspective and the work that we're doing to move the needle on those aligned metrics. I think this is a really good, broader conversation, but one that Dr. Wright and I have been talking about quite a bit, and something that we're excited to present in the future as it relates to how we share what's been done and what needs to be done.
Yeah, I think that the implementation plan that we put out in August is a great summary of the work so far. I mean, if you take a look at that document, and I think it's 200 some odd pages, it is a very detailed account of what the agency has been doing, pillar by pillar, task by task, subtask by subtask. I think what Mr. Crawford and Dr. Michael, I think what you're looking for is there a way to develop a simpler template rather than having to read the entire update, if you will, to get the information? Because there is just a lot that's required of the agency. I can't underscore that enough. I mean, it took us a long time to pull all of the data that was needed to go into this implementation plan, and Phil really did just a yeoman's job of pulling that in pillar by pillar. I think what might be helpful moving forward is for us to maybe look at a review by pillar and develop some kind of cadence for that, whether that is quarterly or whatever it is that you want to do, because sometimes it's going to take a longer period of time than just a month to month to get a feel for what the data are that we're looking for. And so it might be better for us to take a look at what are the data points that might be that we could collect more frequently or are collecting more frequently versus those that we're really only collecting annually. And so I don't want to mislead you to think that we've got more data at hand when it may be a data collection point that is only done either quarterly, annually, or even biannually. So that would be something that we would need to take a look at and get back to you on.
Great. I appreciate that. I think, I'll just add, this board has been at least since I've been on, the way that we, and Mr. Crawford can speak to this at more extent. We have spent time with deep dives on the blueprint. We have done, and we have engaged with particular, I would call reactive pieces where we need to pick this piece up and pick that up. The public, we have an AIB to oversee the blueprint. They have a very specific and important task. This is of the most important work related to public education, and we need to get more view and more deeper in on the pillars, not necessarily into the administrative work of the department, but really developing a much more comprehensive understanding of how are things going, and how is that implementation going. The public has entrusted not only the AIB, but also us to be leading on the reform side by side with you. So we just appreciate the opportunity to see it at this level. But as you've outlined, Dr. Wright, that type of diving deep, and this is the committee where that belongs, and will be important for us to be diving deeply each month into the actual implementation. Thank you.
The other thing is we've learned over the years is that a number of the local boards pay close attention to what we do and what we say. And I would imagine with the elections that are taking place, we have a number of new local board members across the state. So again, part of this is for us, for our information, but also recognize that the local boards use the data as well. So this may be something that they can benefit from in terms of helping them understand where we are on the blueprint.
Yeah, let us take a swipe at developing a template at least, and because I want to really set the right amount of expectation around what data we actually are collecting and when we're collecting it, so that you'll get a chance to really see. I mean, because setting up a Judy Center is setting up a Judy Center, right? But then it's then if you're looking for us to go deeper into the Judy Center, that may be something that's a totally different piece of information that may not necessarily be specific in the blueprint, but specific to what your interests are in terms of student outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Are there any additional comments or questions from board members? This has been, both of these presentations have been excellent. Appreciate the hard work. Okay. If there are no other items, then the floor is now open for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And seconded by
Second.
Okay, those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
All right, well, everyone have an outstanding Thanksgiving in a couple of weeks, and we'll see you first part of December. Thanks again, Dr. Wright and the department, for all of the hard work you guys are doing. You're doing a great job.
Thank you, and happy holidays to everybody that's on the call.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
righty.
Happy
Bye-bye now.
holidays. Thank